I'm sorry to be too dramatic about this, but we are appeasing the bully of gifting 1/5 of Ukraine to a country after it's been invaded. And that is not a good place to be at all. We require America to stand with European allies, to look our enemy in the eyes and not blink. But at the moment, that looks like exactly what we're doing.
Well, the Prime Minister and European leaders are rallying around Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky after yesterday's meeting between Presidents Trump and Putin, and that meeting ending up without a ceasefire deal, or indeed any deal. Keir Starmer, President Zelensky and other European leaders spoke to Donald Trump on the phone while he was flying back to DC on Air Force One early this morning. And the leaders of the European Commission, France, Italy, Germany, UK, Finland, Poland and other European Council leaders released a joint statement saying that the next step must now be further talks, including President Zelensky. And they are ready to work with President Trump and Zelensky towards a trilateral summit with European support. So what could that support look like? Well, joining us now is Tobias Ellwood, former Conservative MP, British Army captain and former Foreign and Defence Minister. Tobias, welcome back to the show.
Good afternoon.
Your take, Tobias, of what we witnessed yesterday in Alaska. Someone has described it as a nothing burger, as in all pompous, all circumstance, but actually nothing really changed.
I think that's a fair description. I mean, step back from the summit itself. The difference between Trump 1.0 and Trump 2.0 is the team around him. Gone are the experienced diplomatic advisors who were able to speak their minds behind the scenes. Instead, he surrounded himself with largely political friends and supporters who lack the experience to put together a summit of this stature, where usually 90% of the details are choreographed well in advance. I mean, this was chaotic. The agenda, even the people around the table, and what was going to be achieved. On one side, it's good. Two adversaries, nuclear powers with huge differences, are meeting face to face in today's difficult and dangerous world. But clearly, Putin was enjoying the limelight. You know, the welcome on that red carpet, invited out of global isolation, handshakes with the United States American president. He could have not asked for more. You know, a day on the international stage and avoiding a deal with Ukraine, simply playing along and even promising to host yet another summit in Moscow. And the talks ended earlier than planned, I understand. They were supposed to go on for much longer. Trump claimed in, I think, a Fox interview that it was 10 out of 10. But he's being naive, I think, with Russian Foreign Minister turning up, Lavrov, with a T-shirt that said CCCP on it, USSR in English. It showed Putin was not taking this seriously. And if I may say, I worry that perhaps Trump is aware of all this and has for some time been looking for an off-ramp. He's not been able to provide that deal that's going to get him some form of Nobel Peace Prize. But he wants to be seen, to bring the stakeholders to the table. And if they don't agree a deal, he can then walk away and say, I'm going to have nothing further to do with this. I've done my bit, and go for a more transactional relationship with Russia, going back to striking mineral deals and so forth with the very adversary that's still attacking Ukraine. And that, of course, leaves Europe in a very, very difficult situation, picking up the pieces indeed.
I want to come back to Europe in just a moment. But do you think, on the very point you're just making there, Tobias, that a clue was in that statement post the 3-hour meeting? Some people were saying it was going to last 7 hours, but it only lasted 3 in the end. But Donald Trump said the ball is now in Zelensky's court. And many people who know Donald Trump, who know what Donald Trump really wants out of this, which is to be seen as the man who brought peace, many people have been saying, look, if there was even a smidgen of hope that in those 3 hours Donald Trump believed that he had got Putin to agree to something, whether it's a ceasefire or a peace deal, he would have wanted to take the credit all by himself. He would not have made a statement that he made, which was, well, now I've done all I can, but it's now down to President Zelensky. He wouldn't have wanted Zelensky to get the credit. He would have wanted to keep the credit to himself. Is that reading a little bit too much into his language?
No, I think that's very fair, and that's the analysis that we now need to conduct, because even Trump would have wanted to take away something from this. His own advisors would say, listen, it's all getting rather tricky here. You made that promise to sort this all out when you came into office. It's clearly not going to happen. The idea that was mooted last week that there will be some form of land swaps or moving of territories and so forth immediately had pushback from European capitals, quite rightly, and of course, Ukraine. And this has left Trump scratching his head saying, how on earth do I get myself out of here? So this, unfortunately, is the bigger picture that we now face, a very possibility that America could be dialing back, not just from Ukraine, but also from Europe. And Europe and America, not on the same page, when the world is getting more dangerous, becoming more unstable, is not a good place to be.
Tobias, why do you think Putin doesn't seem to be afraid of Donald Trump? Let's not forget that before this meeting was announced, the timeline the deadline, I should say, that Donald Trump had set had just run over. He had set a deadline for Russia to make some moves towards a ceasefire. Otherwise, they would face what he called very strong and possibly catastrophic sanctions. They were postponed because of this meeting. He said in the run-up to this meeting that unless we come out with some sort of ceasefire, if he doesn't get the feeling that Vladimir Putin was serious about bringing an end to this war, this would again result in those harsh sanctions. Well, we finished the meeting, no ceasefire, no agreement at all, and no sanctions. Why have we not seen those materialize?
It has been a curious timeline indeed. You're right to point that out. I attended the NATO summit only a couple of months ago. And it was clear there that Donald Trump seems to be finally getting it, recognizing that Putin was not his friend, could not be trusted, and would pursue further war beyond Ukraine if allowed to do so. And then you had this Medvedev spat, if you remember, when he put out, the former president put out a provocative tweet, and Donald Trump said, right, I'm tasking submarines to the area because this is looking to it like we're heading towards war. And now we have this courting in Alaska. There's been no strategy. This is the absence of any clarity of direction from America. Secondary sanctions would have been exactly what would have harmed Russia, would have forced Putin, to reconcile that he's up against someone. But Trump has blinked, sadly. And bigger picture, there is a 1938 feel to it. I'm sorry to be too dramatic about this, but we are appeasing the bully of gifting 1/5 of Ukraine to a country after it's been invaded. And that is not a good place to be at all. We require America to stand with European allies, to look our enemy in the eyes and not blink. But at the moment, that looks like exactly what we're doing.
Tobias, European leaders have rallied in support of Ukraine. That's not unusual. They have rallied behind President Zelensky, saying that the next move has to be sit down with President Putin. However, former Defence Secretary Sir Ben Wallace was on Times Radio Breakfast earlier today, and he was telling Callum MacDonald that the UK simply can't contribute troops to any kind of war effort.
I've seen trailed in the media in the last few days, in the British media, that British troops are on standby to go to Ukraine if a deal is done. What troops? With who? We're completely overstretched. We're completely hollowed out. The SDSR, that was a big fanfare a few months ago, came with no extra money at all. No real solid change to the British Armed Forces will happen towards the end of the decade.
A guest of ours previously on the show, Stephanie Bapst, formerly of NATO, said that NATO needs to step up and forget America and as an ally. But as you hear there from Ben Wallace, is NATO and European armies, are they up to scratch to step up and replace the US?
Well, I mean, a lot of points there. If were a deal to be secured, were there a ceasefire in place, it's then important that the two protagonists are then kept apart, and that's usually done by a third force, the United Nations sanctioned capability, and that's where Britain would definitely put its hand up and say we will participate in that. Ben Wallace is right to then turn to the state of our own armed forces at the moment, and I'm afraid the Conservatives are as much to blame as anybody else. We've allowed our defence posture to erode over the last 3 decades. And now we're facing, as I suggested, a very dangerous era of uncertainty. We need to upgrade. But absolutely, there would be a collective effort of which Britain would participate. It's jumping the gun to think we're going to immediately start tasking troops, boots on the ground. There's an awful lot of work to be done. And as we've just been discussing, I don't think we're going to get anywhere close to that, because I think this is going to fail spectacularly. I could be wrong, but right now, all the signs is that Putin will continue doing what it's doing. He was even firing missiles during the actual Alaska summit.
Yeah.
And America, Donald Trump, is going to retreat.
Tobias, thank you for your time. Always good to speak. Tobias Ellwood there, former Conservative MP, British Army captain, and a former Foreign and Defence Minister.